Take advantage of it or you're insane. Let's go to Max Keiser. He's not affiliated with me or Ted. Does that sound like a good deal to you, Max Keiser?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they didn't have your mic up. Say it again.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Now, you've been a gold bug for a long time, and you've been very successful with that. Let's talk about dollar tumbles on report of its demise. You're in Paris. You've got some inside info. Max Keiser of MaxKeiser.com. You've got the floor. Tell us what's happening right now.
Well, Alex, Robert Fisk had a great story in The Independent in the UK this week, and he was talking about the oil-producing nations in the world. They want to get out of pricing oil in dollars. They want to start pricing oil in a new currency, a basket of currencies, anything but the dollar, because the dollar gives the U.S. really an unfair advantage in the world markets, because any country that wants to buy oil, they first have to buy dollars, because oil only trades in dollars. And this is a very unfair advantage that the U.S. has. And what these countries are noticing, countries like China, Russia, Iran, is that the U.S. is using the profits that they're making from this monopoly pricing power of the dollar and the price of oil, and what's called seigniorage, which is they basically get a commission on all the dollars that they're producing. They're using the profits to, fund their wars, to fund the Pentagon, to fund the invasion of Iraq or the invasion of Afghanistan, or now, looks like the invasion of Iran. And the thing about Iran is that Iran and China signed $8 billion deal for oil with Iran. So China is thinking, even though they are heavily connected to the dollar and their economy has grown as a result of tying their currency to the dollar, they're thinking that now it's time to divorce themselves from the dollar. It's time to kick America to the curb, and it's time for these other countries to stretch their wings and take over in terms of the new superpowers. And and Robert Fisk basically makes that point in his Independent article, and I can confirm pretty much what he's been saying, because it's the same thing I'm hearing here in Paris and my contacts in the Mideast, that in fact a new currency is being formulated, a new currency that'll be represented by a basket of currencies. The only a couple of things that Robert Fisk mentioned that I would add is that he mentioned that gold would be one of the components of the new currency. But what I'm hearing is that gold could represent as much as 50% of the basket in the new currency. And this is what's driving gold higher now, because banks and central banks have stopped selling their gold, and the investment banks and Wall Street and other places are starting to accumulate gold. And I think gold could be, it could go into a bubble phase. It could be like a dot-com bubble or a real estate bubble. They need a bubble in America to keep things rolling on Wall Street, to keep the bonuses flowing. And people have been questioning, what is going to be the next bubble? Is it going to be carbon credits? Is it going to be green investments? Is it going to be commodity investments? Is it going to be gold? And gold could be a huge bubble. You could see the price spike. You could see the price go to $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 an ounce. If that's what Goldman Sachs and these guys decide is going to be the next gravy train for, their big bonuses. And I'm hearing some other things in Europe, some really interesting things, which I've been. But anyway, that's my comment.
Well, hold on a minute.
Far.
Hold on, Max. I want to hear your inside info. You hinted at that yesterday on international television. I'd like you to, because I know you don't make stuff up, give us entree into your inside info. We'd really appreciate it. All those investors and people out there that want to know what's happening, because you are there in that major crossroads of Paris. But before we get to that, there's something larger going on here. I read Club of Rome and UN documents and Rockefeller documents 15 years ago that they'd written years before that, 20 years ago, that they planned to use the U.S., use us as a military to set up world government, then blame everything on us, implode the dollar, and bring in a new bank-to-bank currency, and then have regional currencies. They don't want to have one global currency that they manipulate and play the markets on a global scale So there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and that now Russia and China are basically owned and controlled by these interests, and that the U.S. is just having all the debt piled on it, and that they're preparing to kind of seal the deal or swap spit or become blood brothers by torching the U.S. into third worlddom. And so that China and Russia and the Middle East shouldn't be celebrating so much. Sure, the U.S. is the drunk husband that comes home, every night and cold cocks them. But they're getting out of bed with the U.S. and getting in bed with Beelzebub.
Well, I mean, break it down very simply. It's very simple to put it in the following terms. 75% of all the transactions in the world take place in U.S. dollars. It is the world's reserve currency. And that's the way it's been since the end of World War II. And it is the basis of America's hegemony around the world. And America has a soft empire, as well as a hard empire. I mean, they have, of course, their embassies and they have their facilities all over the world. But the dollar has really been the means by which they have the major influence around the world. And what these countries like Russia and China and Iran, of course, signed the Shanghai Cooperative Organization, the SCO. If you look that up on Google, you'll find out all about it. They have a mutual defense pact. If America hits Iran, China and Russia have pledged to side with Iran and strike back, basically. So it's just economics. China has a deal with Iran for $8 billion in oil, and America seems addicted to war to feed their machine. But, last year in 2008, Alex, the U.S. collected about $2.5 trillion in taxes, and 100% of that money went to two places: bailouts on Wall Street and the defense contractors. Now, that's an incredible statistic. 100% of all income tax collected last year, $2.5 trillion, went to either bailouts or military. There's no money going anywhere else. And, this is just setting up the dollar as really the leper with the most fingers. Or I should say it's the leper with the least fingers. It's a currency that nobody wants anymore, and they're putting in place these other currencies, and they're looking at gold because gold is the only way that they can have any accountability and that they can have any way of hoping to escape all of the debt meisters there on Wall Street.
Yeah, not being shysted by the money changers that are always creating tens of trillions in fiat money and then using it as weapons, economic and military weapons, against them. Now, the vampires of central banking, the best, the dirtiest, are out of Europe and the U.S., obviously. But China and other people play their games. The Arabs have their own system of banking, but they don't allow the usury. We're up to 30% loan sharking rates here in the U.S. now with the credit card population, so much so that people are kicking the habit and going to debit cards. Debit cards for Visa this week finally passed more use than credit cards, so that's something healthy out of all this. But will the Goldman Sachs vampires just move on after they've eaten the bones off of the United States, or are they dependent? I mean, is this their Transylvanian earth? Is England, Israel, the United States, Germany, France, is that Count Dracula's earth, that he can go anywhere, but he's got to haul those caskets around? I mean, is there any way to kill the vampire?
With a silver spike. A spike made of silver. In other words, the thing that Goldman Sachs and these guys on Wall Street hate is gold and silver, because it's the opposite of a fiat money system. I've told people for years now, if they want to kill Goldman Sachs deader than a hammer, as you might say, if everyone bought 1 ounce of gold bullion and the price traded immediately up to its inflation-adjusted normal price of $2,000 an ounce, it would remove 90% of Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan's ability to spin cotton candy derivatives out of, pulling it out of their backsides and claiming that this has some validity in the market. And that's why they just hate gold, and that's why they've done everything since Milton Friedman and Alan Greenspan and Ben Bernanke and Tim Geithner. All their rhetoric, all their white papers, all their doctoral dissertations have all been about the greatness of fiat currency and fractional reserve banking and why gold is dead. Now, what's happening? Now, let me get into this. What's happening is that these countries that are gold that are petroleum exporters are saying enough is enough. We don't care what the risks are at this point because we're sick of America's wars. We're sick of all the market manipulation. We're sick of Goldman Sachs manipulating the COMEX and the NYMEX. We're just going to introduce our own basket, our own currency. We're going to put gold in there. It'll be the first gold-backed security currency since 1971, when the U.S. dollar has still had some tenuous connection to gold, but there really hasn't been a gold-backed.
But Max, the last time they did that, the globalists blew the hell out of Iraq, saying they had WMDs. Now the Arabs are getting ready to do it again, and notice they found secret reactors that the Easter Bunny laid.